Good Yontif, everyone. I hope everyone's fast is going well. I'd like to welcome you to another edition of Mincha Moments on this Yom Kippur 5781. This edition of Mincha Moments is even more special because it's actually the first time we've ever had an entire family tell a story together. And this story is truly extraordinary because we've been living with COVID for over 6 months. And for the Beltzman family, there really isn't one aspect of their life that hasn't been affected by COVID. They've experienced most of what COVID can do in the darkest and saddest of ways, and yet there's also a beautiful story of love and togetherness and of survival. And so we welcome all of you. Today we have Linda Beltzman, we have Robin Beltzman and Adam Beltzman, and Daniel cannot be with us today, but we are sending out love to him. And how many grandchildren do you have, Linda?
8 beautiful, intelligent, and loving grandchildren.
Of course,
4
they're
boys
the best.
and 4 girls.
Wonderful, wonderful. Oops, there you are, Robin. It's okay.
Right.
It's okay. Technologically,
I'm dealing with my child that's in school as well, so I apologize.
No problem. No problem. So full disclosure, my mom and Stanley of blessed memory are actually cousins. But even if they weren't, I love this family. I've known the Beltzmans my entire life, and these are very, very special people. And they're coming to us today from all over the United States, and we're so lucky to have them. So Linda, your story with Stanley is an incredible story right from the start. So can you tell us how you got together and why that story is so unbelievable?
Okay, be happy to. I call our story Beshared. I left having lunch with my mother a cold, icy day in January of 1981. On the way home to meet the kindergarten bus, I passed by a horrific car accident. Immediately upon seeing the car and the ambulance leaving the scene, I knew the person in that car didn't make it. It sent chills down my spine. Later that evening, I met a friend of mine for dinner. She was late. I said, "Laura, you look horrible. What's the matter?" She said, "My friend's wife was killed in a car accident today." I said, "Was that 12 Mile and Telegraph?" She said, "Yes." And I knew that I had a connection to that family. I asked Laura, because I was a young widow with nobody to talk to, if her friend ever needed someone to sound off to, I was willing. Maybe a week or so later, a man gave me a call, and we talked on the phone, we commiserated, and that was it. A week later, I was taking Adam, who was, I don't know, maybe 4 at the time, to Sunday school to Dot Shalom, but there was no Sunday school that day. So I said, "Okay, Adam, let's go have another breakfast." We went to Plaza Deli, and there was a man sitting there with 2 small, gorgeous children. And I heard him speak. He looked very rabbinic. He had a black, beautiful beard. And I don't know what possessed me. I went up to him and I said, "Are you Stanley Beltzman?" He looked me over once or twice before I answered. He said, "Why? Who are you?" I said, "I'm Linda Pitt. We talked on the phone last week." Well, being the gentleman that he was, he asked me to sit down. That night, he asked me to have dinner with him. And the rest is history. But I have to preface this by saying the previous July, I went to a fortune teller. I was down in the dumps. My life wasn't going anywhere. I needed some reassurance. And the fortune teller told me I was going to meet a man who had something to do with shiny metals. Stanley was in the scrap metal business.
Well, I'm going to show everybody this beautiful picture of you and Stan, so everyone can see. Hopefully, can you see that?
Yep.
Did you see it? I didn't see it. I want to try. Did you see it? You and
I
Stan?
saw it.
Oh, okay. Okay. So you and Stan kind of came into each other's life in moments of grief. So you had shared your grief. You were both widows. You both had children, and you brought your families together. And what's incredible is you found so much joy. You created so much joy, and Stan was quite the firecracker. He didn't seem to be one. What would you guys say, Robin? What would you say about your dad?
Oh, he definitely had a larger than life personality. When he entered the room, he was there, and his laughter and exuberance, it just was all encompassing. I mean, if you ask my daughters, they would probably say that he was the smushiest, most snuggliest person that they ever met. I mean,
Yeah,
they just live for those moments with him.
for sure. What about you, Adam?
He was just, a huggy, kissy guy always. And no matter if he was your dad or you just meeting him, it's the same. Just
Mhm.
very warm and inviting and just made you feel comfortable. And, always a scratchy beard, sort of a kiss, hugging kiss.
Yes, yes. And he offered that love freely and really to everyone, which made him so special. Um, so here we are. You created this beautiful family of 8 grandchildren, and you're all over the country, and then COVID hits, right? You're going about your life. Robin, you and Glenn are running a restaurant. Adam, you're working and you're with your wife, you're in Chicago. Linda, you and Stan are living your life, and COVID hits. So the restaurant shuts down, everything shuts down. Linda, did you and Stan discuss COVID? Like when it started, did you say, okay, this is our plan for what we're gonna do? Did you realize what was happening? Were you concerned?
Okay, I realized more than Stan because at this time, Stanley was in the early stages of dementia. And I had to prepare for both of us. I did make sure that our house was ready. I had the wipes, I had the Purell, I had the toilet paper, I had the water. I bought food. We had just gone to the cardiologist, and this was before everything shut down.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I'm going out for dinner tonight with my family. So I guess it's okay for you to go out for dinner. Don't stop living your lives. Well, obviously, due to the fact that we weren't quarantining or social distancing, somehow we caught it. But I was prepared at home, and needless to say, Stanley was not as aware as I was,
Mm-hmm.
but he had me to keep him safe.
Mm-hmm.
But it didn't work.
So I remember actually, Linda, once I knew that Stan was ill and was in the hospital, I remember I talked to you, and then I talked to Robin also. I talked to you, and you could hardly breathe. And I was saying, I think you need to go to the hospital. I think it's time for you to get medical attention. And you were so worried about Stan that you were kind of saying, no, no, no. And then the next thing I knew, I believe, Robin, you were there, and you tell me what happened, because you kind of said, this is it, we're going.
Well, my brothers and I had been in total conversations about this and ongoing back and forth. And I just went over to their house. They had called 911 one time before that, and they told them that they were better off staying at home.
The
But
two
as
of them.
the two of
Both
them,
Stan and Linda. Okay.
correct. And at this time, they're telling no one had PPE, no one had protective gear. They're telling us, you really should not go in there. So as the only child that's here in Michigan with them, you're going, and I'm standing outside of their house, screaming in or talking to my mom through a door. And she did seem to be ambulatory. I'm not saying she was well any means,
Right.
but
Right.
she could at moments get herself up, and if she was able to talk to the paramedics. And at that point, they really only were concerned, they never even checked their pulse oxes as far as I know. they really just were checking my dad for his sugar levels. And they said extremely high, and under normal circumstances, we would take him to the hospital. But with all this going on in the world, we're just not comfortable doing that. Just make sure he gets his insulin and call his doctor. And then it just all kind of started to turn to crap from there. So then they refused them again. So then later that day, I believe I had gone back to the house, called 911 again. Glenn had actually gotten on the phone with someone that he knows that was the fire chief of Farmington Hills, and was like, hey, listen, I understand this world is crazy right now, but what can you do to help my in-laws? Like, this is nuts. Like, he said, we can't go in there. We don't know what's going on. He said, from what I can tell, he's like, my mother-in-law is very sick. He's like with a high fever and is definitely symptomatic, but my father-in-law can hardly even talk, and we don't know what's really going on. And so finally he worked with us, and we got them to take my dad. My mom at that point, they said, no, you should just kind of stay where you are if you can. They did offer to take her as well, and they kept telling her, but you'll be better here. So I called my girlfriend, who is a nurse at Henry Ford, and I reached out to her and I said, I know your life is crazy right now, but if you have a second to just give me some advice, like, I don't know what to do. I can't go in that house. I don't have this gear that they're walking in there with.
Right.
And she had told me at that point, she's like, go to a store and try to find a pulse ox machine. She goes, right now you can't find anything. She said, you know, she told me where to go in Novi to the scrub store and to get it and to take it over to my mom. And when I gave it to her, she said, at first she said it wasn't working, but the reading she got was 70. And my girlfriend said, absolutely not. This is horrible. She said, you need to make sure that they take her right now. So then at that point, I called 911 again and said, she has to go. And at that point, I think right before they came to they were getting ready to go into the house to get my mom, we had gotten the news that my dad was COVID positive. So I wanted the ambulance, you know, like the whole rescue team that shows up to like know that if he's positive,
She was living with a COVID positive patient. Right.
Definitely positive as well.
Right.
So, you know, just so however you need to prepare yourself more. And they finally just took her, and it just turned crazy from that moment on.
If it wasn't already, because to me that already sounds, I mean, if I had seen a 70 on a pulse ox, I'm not a doctor, but I know that's far from 100, and that's dangerous. So Adam, you're hearing all of this from afar. How are you, what's going on inside of you that you're hearing both your parents are being rushed to Henry Ford Hospital?
Yeah, it was just sort of surreal, being in Chicago, you know, really wanted to get in the car and drive there, but everyone was telling me it's not going to do any good.
Right.
You're not going to be able to go into the house, into the hospital, anywhere.
Right.
I give Robin a lot of credit for, you know, doing what she did to at least get, you know, things sorted out before things really got crazy. You know, we were all just sort of like just taking it minute by minute, and, you know, all getting on the phone together and trying to figure out what to do.
Right.
And it just sort of like, it literally continued on like that. I feel like just for like another month, it was constant from that point.
Right. Right. Well, I know I would talk to Robin, and you were kind of just waiting for updates. And at this point, this is when the hospitals were overrun, and the updates came, unfortunately, few and far between. Linda, when you got to the hospital, did you know how seriously sick Stan was at that point?
I remember getting in the ambulance. I remember hearing the siren. I remember feeling the speed of the ambulance and thinking to myself, this must be serious. And that's the last thing I remember until I woke up on the ventilator days later. So I had no idea until I was able to scribble notes to a nurse. I was still intubated, and the only thing they would tell me was, he's very sick. But they never gave me any idea of how sick.
Right. Robin, were they telling you, did you know just how critical he was?
Yes, they did. They were letting us know that, it was a pretty dire situation, that by the
Mhm.
time that he actually got to the hospital, and it was ironic, my girlfriend happened to be on the team, so that allowed me to get a little bit more information,
Mhm.
probably,
Mhm.
that he was without oxygen for a long time. So she had even made a comment that with the dementia, without having good blood oxygen, that there could have been damage probably regardless.
Yeah.
So, you know, when the doctor spoke with Adam, wasn't on that call with Daniel and I mean, at that point, as soon as he got there and they finally got a doctor to get in touch with us the night that they took him, I mean, he was already in like 4 organ failure.
Mm.
So, I mean, this is how people don't believe, like, people all have their things and they turn it political and all of that. And I just always say to people, well, you just don't know. It's like I feel like at this point we're protecting humankind. We're not doing it because it's political or any other reason. It's people, if they've never gone through this, they don't really understand the depth of how hard this virus at that point in March, what it was
Sure.
doing to people. And, you
Sure.
know, listening to my girlfriend, she said when, they would come in, and she said with my mom and my dad, and they go to suction out your lungs and you're pulling out like spider webs out of lungs. It's not even fluid, that you just don't know. And they didn't know at this point. And to this day, even my mom will attest that she'll go to the doctor with some of the complications she's having and they don't know what to do because we've
We
never
don't know.
experienced it.
So I remember, Robin, you and I spoke. You were on the way to the hospital, and I will never forget this as long as I live. You said, Jen, I could lose them both.
Mm-hmm.
My heart just cracked in half. And because you go from living your life, right, to almost losing both your parents. And we didn't know about the virus. So at a certain point, I remember hearing that, Linda, that you were awake and kind of struggling with the vent. At a certain point, they did allow you to go see your dad. Did you go alone or did you go with your mom?
Well, she was still in the hospital. So, like, truthfully, it was so sad. I mean, that was the first time I had seen my mom probably in oh, a month and a half, because Hannah and I gone on a cruise for her college spring break at the end of February. And so my brother Daniel was very adamant about like having me not see my parents. And cruise ship kept keeping us updated. No one had tested positive or anything like that. But at that point, we just didn't want to risk it. And we knew my dad had a compromised immune system with diabetes and heart issue. There was stuff going on that if he were to get it from what the news was saying, we knew that it would not be good. So, I stayed away. And so when they called and they said, this is pretty much it. Like, if you would like to come say goodbye, you have an hour. And in my life, I've never experienced anything like that. No one could, obviously, my brothers weren't here. Son wasn't allowed to go in with me because he was not blood relative. That he drove me there, but like from the minute that we pulled up, I had an hour until I get back in the car. And what you had to go through to get geared up to go into the hospital, it was all just so frightening. And walking in and seeing your parent like that, and them telling you you can't touch them, you can't hold them, you can't kiss them, and you're at the final stages of their life. And I'll never forget, my mom kept saying, can't you just pull the plug while we're here? Can't you just do this? Like, let him pass with us having family. Like, we could be here. And because she was COVID positive, and still going through all of that, like, she was able to touch him. I just was not. And so, like, you're sitting there across like the bed watching your parents have their final moments, which should be so private, but yet I was there for it too. It was just, I've never in my life experienced something like that. And I truthfully don't ever want to ever again.
So Adam, we're gonna let you, Adam is in the woods in Wisconsin. He's coming to us. So we're gonna let him get back online. But Linda, do you wanna share what that moment was like for you?
Well, I was able to go into Stanley's room. It was, I think, the second time I had seen him while he was ill, and I had been off the ventilator, and he was unconscious, and the only thing that I thought to do was to sing to him, thinking maybe he could hear my voice. So as bad as my voice was, I sang some old Elvis Presley songs that he loved. And then Robin came in, and I gave her time alone with her father, which I think she needed to have. And I left the room, and it was the last time Stanley and I were together.
Adam, can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm back. Sorry.
That's okay. What about you? Did you say goodbye over the phone?
No. I knew that my mom was going to go see him, and with Robin, I know that that was happening. And I talked to Robin sort of before she was on her way to the hospital, and knew that was happening, but didn't get to do it over as FaceTime or anything. Like I felt very removed from the whole situation, and to this day just felt like that whole part of it was sort of I was robbed of that moment. And it's really unfortunate, because whenever I've had grandparents pass, something like that, you get to say goodbye and sort of be in the room, and just didn't get to have that experience,
Right.
which made it a little bit easier to process. But at the same time, I still haven't had that.
Mm-hmm.
It's the mourning's incomplete.
For sure. Well, that and you're all trying to heal your children, right? And who again were completely removed from this process because children couldn't go near the hospital while they're pulled out of school, and all of the things that make their life normal. There wasn't one part of this that felt like the way we mourn, right? Especially as Jews, we crowd in houses till the windows steam, and we feed each other and we care for each other. So also in the midst of all of that, Linda, you are still really sick, and we know that you can hear in your voice that you're still dealing with the after effects. You've had problems with your vocal cords, right?
Yeah, the ventilator damaged my airway, my vocal cords. And after they dismissed me or discharged me from Henry Ford, they sent me to a rehab center where I felt like I was drowning. I couldn't breathe. I didn't have any medical care there. And my wonderful children got me out of there and back to ICU at Henry Ford, where they were able to diagnose my airway, which was at a 1, which was very dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had 2 vocal cord surgeries since my release from the hospital at the end of April.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something I'm going to be dealing with a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in good hands with my Pleasant ENT. He has treated Andrea Bocelli, Pavarotti, Aretha Franklin, but unfortunately, he'll never make me sing like Streisand.
Well, those are still some pretty good credentials, I have to say. So after Stan passed away, I know you guys kind of had a remembering service, which was really beautiful. People were just sharing memories of Stan, who was the guy, right? The guy who everyone seemed to know they could go to, right? He was that safe harbor kind of person. And you still want to have a funeral service, you said, when people can gather, really gather together to give him the honors you feel that he rightly deserves. So after this experience, what would you say how did it change you, or did it change the way you kind of approach either family or community? Like Robin, you talked a lot about protecting community, right? Is that something you're walking away with, like how important it is for each of us to protect each other?
I really feel it's important because there's so many people out there even still today that kind of think this is a joke and that it's not real because they haven't been affected. So do I enjoy wearing a mask when I'm at work for 9 or 10 hours? No, I don't. But do I pull it down and take moments to breathe? Because I don't know who's in front of me and I don't know what they're going home to. So it's not about me doing this because I feel like we can't live in fear. I mean, I think you need to be conscientious and you need to be cautious and you need to take precautions that maybe you didn't before. But it's really about, you don't know what somebody else has going on. And
Right.
I just never want to feel like, oh my God, I could have prevented this by doing something so simple that's being asked of us that sure, it's foreign to all of us, but it's so simple,
Sure.
such a simple thing to do to protect humankind.
Right. What about you, Adam? Have you, what did you come away with this, either personally or even as a Jew or as a dad or as a son? What have you come
I
away with?
mean, I could go, there's so many different ways to answer this question. You know, I'll let Robin sort of answer it from like a COVID perspective, but I would sort of say that, you know, I think that we as Jews, the way that we mourn, you know, like you said, we get together, we crowd in the house, we sit Shiva, we hug and kiss. We get to do a little bit of that with our, you know, Zoom Shiva, which was great. We pulled it together and we had 400 people, you know, on the call. And I had so many people tell me how wonderful it was who didn't even know my dad, but they got to say to me, I really got to understand the type of person your dad was from all the stories that were told. But, you know, I just feel like I said before, the mourning is incomplete. You know, I haven't seen Daniel and Adi. You know, I spent a little bit of time with Robin when I went in to see my mom after she got out of the hospital, but we haven't all been together as a family. And I just feel like, you know, people shouldn't take for granted those opportunities that they get to be with their family, because you'd never think in a million years that I wouldn't be able to say goodbye to my dad.
Exactly.
Or be with my mom when she's at her sickest moments.
Exactly.
You know, like, so I'm just, you know, I'm thankful, you know, that, you know, we got to do it with technology, but it's not the same.
Yeah, I think that's the experience most people are having, is that they realize that, you know, there's so many wonderful aspects about Judaism when we're joyful, but that Judaism understands what we need when we mourn, and that those rituals have been so dearly missed. Linda, I know you're sitting there with a picture of Stan. Do you want to show everyone your Stan picture?
Yes.
I love this picture of Stan.
And your father took it.
He
At
did.
his 65th
Yeah,
birthday party.
he did. What do you miss the most about Stan, Linda?
I miss the laughter in my house. I miss him reassuring me that everything will be okay. I just have to tell you a funny story.
Okay.
Every restaurant that I go to, because Stanley loves waiters and waitresses, and they all became his friends. And since he passed away, every restaurant that I go to, they give me free food because I was Stanley's wife. It's so funny.
He did leave an impression everywhere he went. That is for sure. He was one of those remarkable people that, you know, lots of people walk through our lives, right? They walk by and we might notice them, we might not. You couldn't help but notice Stanley Beltzman. And if you didn't, he would make sure he introduced himself. And I have to say, you know, it's so strange because we're going to be virtual for the high holidays. But for me, I always saw Stan on the high holidays. It did not matter how many people were in Temple Israel. We always found each other. And I will greatly miss that as we enter this Jewish New Year. I don't know how to thank you all for taking the time to share your story. I know it's a difficult one to tell, but as I said in the beginning, I think it's a beautiful story of love and togetherness and sadness and survival. And on behalf of myself and the rest of the clergy of Temple Israel, we wish you a happy and a healthy and a safe New Year. Thank you, Beltzmans. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jennifer. I love you.